Hi friends, welcome to my recap of JW Broadcasting for February 2022, which is part 2 of the annual meeting. Now, I understand that the annual meeting was leaked and many of you have seen excerpts of it. So I've taken this 2-hour and 10-minute JW broadcast and I have edited it down with comments just to highlight the points. What you will see is that when you bring it down to just a shell, that their goal, what remains, is death, lies, and deceit. All right? So, for instance, Mark Sanderson calls Garrett Loesch's talk very comforting, loving words. You'll hear him say that, okay? But really, are they? Because Loesch says the word death, dying, or dead 25 times, not to mention the other references. Only the times he said the words. That's not normal, friends. So anyway, we'll get to Loesch's talk, but let's get started. Take a look.
Well, we know that the pandemic has altered all of our lives, and we commend all in the worldwide brotherhood for your loyal response to direction.
Jehovah provides all of the things we need to accomplish our ministry and to feel secure no matter what tribulation we face. We truly have experienced Jehovah's loving support during this pandemic. Our Heavenly Father, through His organization, has provided just what we've needed to endure faithfully in our ministry and to stay strong spiritually. How has the direction to shelter in place affected circuit overseers, construction servants, field missionaries, and special pioneers?
To follow the governing body's direction to shelter in place, we couldn't go in to see Steve's mother.
She was in aged care, just 10 minutes away from where we're based. She died whilst we were sheltering in place.
She died. She was 10 minutes away. But the governing body told them to shelter in place, and this woman died without, apparently, family around her. I find that unbelievable.
At the beginning of the shelter-in-place direction, I had a very difficult time. I had flashbacks that were very difficult for me. During the Vietnam War, I was imprisoned because of taking a neutral stand. I had a reaction to this lockdown of being confined.
Fear of isolation is the biggest challenge for me. My lovely husband that I've been working with for years, helping build places of worship for Jehovah, was diagnosed of cancer and died after 5 months.
How is this edifying? How is this building up the congregation? Death, lies, and deceit. Let me show you more.
We especially discerned the value of the direction in November 2020, when suddenly I was taken to the hospital because of a serious heart disease and severe pneumonia. It turned out my life was in danger. The doctors evaluated that if I had contracted the coronavirus in that condition, I would not have had a chance to survive it.
While sheltering in place, how did these obedient brothers and sisters stay positive and maintain their physical, emotional, and spiritual health?
Do you see what's happening here? Obedience. It's about obedience and obeying the governing body, even if your mother is dying 10 minutes away.
Having Zoom meetings, having the meetings for field service, doing witnessing by Zoom, I can't say enough good about it. Being able to not meet an hour requirement, but go ahead and be very busy spiritually.
All right, so now they talk about how loving and gracious and kind Jehovah is by not having an hour requirement. But really, friends, why is it that they no longer have an hour requirement? Is it so that they can keep their numbers up? Is it because they're losing so many members that if they bring this hour requirement down to just say 10 or 15 minutes, then more would be considered active? I don't know, but let's see what else these guys have to say.
When the governing body removed the specific hour requirement, I think we felt their trust.
The governing body members are the ones who created the required hours in the first place. What about all of the pioneers who put in 90 hours a month, year after year after year? That was the requirement when I was in. Or the auxiliary pioneer who had to put in 60 hours a month. Now they can have much more reduced hours as a result of Jehovah's trust, the governing body's trust. Doesn't make any sense. I mean, these people are sheltering in place. Don't they have more time to write letters and make phone calls? Shouldn't the hour requirement be increased? They're in isolation. They have nothing to do.
I really feel how much the governing body cares for us every time they mention in their letters that they do not require us to reach the required hours. Many brothers and sisters today are depressed.
Oh, well, that's truth.
Recently in my circuit, 59 Bible students progressed to baptism.
Friends, I've said this in my videos before. When is it true that when you do less, you have greater results?
There are unexpected things that can happen to us. By striving to obey from the heart now, we can be prepared to obey the directions that we are going to receive in the Great Tribulation.
There it is, friends. It's all about obedience. We know that in an upcoming Watchtower article, they're going to repeat this rhetoric about obeying even when it doesn't make sense.
We are sure this is not the last time we have to be obedient. We see Bible prophecies being fulfilled right in front of our eyes, and ahead of us are even greater events that will bring larger trials.
Ahead of us are even greater events, more trials. I cannot imagine the fear and anxiety that an indoctrinated Jehovah's Witness is experiencing right now. My family members. This is just horrifying what they're doing to these people. They're telling them they must obey, and then they're terrifying them to keep them obedient.
I personally have benefited from following the governing body's direction. I've actually felt joy every day, and I can only put that down to the blessing from Jehovah God on our efforts to be obedient.
We've both benefited from the direction from the governing body because we trust they are the faithful and discreet slave Christ Jesus is directing them. I am so absolutely grateful to the governing body for providing direction that is blessing every single one of us around the earth.
Tell me that wasn't scripted. Every single part of that, tell me that was not scripted.
We're happy now to have our very dear brother, Garrett Loesch, a member of the governing body, to provide comfort for all of us with his talk entitled, "No Resident Will Say, I Am Sick."
All right. Mark Sanderson tells us that Garrett Loesch is about to provide comfort for us. Take note of how many times he says death, dying, or died. It's mind-boggling.
Worldwide, some 20,000 of our brothers and sisters died so far from the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. But tens of thousands of our brothers and sisters, including many relatives, have been and are now affected emotionally by this fact. Death's toll affects friends and family, and the feeling of loss is deep. Secular sources say that the overall death rate in the United States is about 1% of the population each year. Every year around the world, an average of over 60 million people die. The daily average is about 164,000.
Are you comforted yet? Do you feel comfort? Remember, Mark Sanderson said this was going to be comforting.
How sad. With the COVID-19 plague, the number of total deaths worldwide is, of course, higher. In the United States, over 600,000 citizens died from COVID-19 alone. The death of a loved one is still a traumatic loss, which is deeply felt. Of course, if those that died were part of our family, it affects you much more emotionally. We did not expect them to die. Even though you know that they will come back, you still feel hurt and are very sorry to have temporarily lost them. It is very sad to lose somebody in death.
Friends, I've said this so many times before. Hebrews 9:27, it says, even as it is appointed unto men once to die, and then the judgment. There is no self-atonement of sin. Sins are not canceled out at death. There is no resurrection for a second chance. This guy is being deceitful. He is a false prophet. The Jehovah's Witness resurrection and utopian paradise is a hook, a lie, to keep their followers enslaved. Because remember, they do refer to them as good-for-nothing slaves. And that's what they are. Unfortunately, in the minds, in the eyes of these men.
To be sad and to cry in the case of somebody's death is not an indication of somebody's lack of faith or an emotional imbalance. Even in the past, Jehovah miraculously proved that he is able to prevent sickness and subsequent death.
25 times in an 18-minute talk, he says death, dying, dead 25 times. That is not normal, friends.
As much as we are sorry to have lost relatives and or friends in death due to COVID-19 or any other reason, we can rejoice that Jehovah will bring them back in the resurrection.
There is no bringing them back. To be educated, to give them a second chance to learn about the God of Watchtower, okay? So Loesch goes on to talk about the resurrections in the Bible. If you want to read about those, friends, read them from the Bible. Don't listen to this guy. I just went ahead and edited it all out to save some time.
Better than the resurrection of the 8 persons mentioned in the Bible who had to die again at a later day. The future resurrection is better because it contains the possibility to never die again in all eternity.
All right, friends. So basically what he's saying here is that the prior ones, the people in the Bible who had been resurrected died again, except for Jesus Christ, okay? He was resurrected and then ascended to heaven. Therefore, Hebrews 11:35 talks about a better resurrection, but where Loesch goes wrong is when he says that there is a possibility to never die again. That's the twist. That is not biblical, friend.
Jehovah will give the resurrected ones a body just as it pleases him. Their bodies will be physically sound and obviously look similar to the original body, so that they will be recognized by their loved ones.
All right, so friends, let me explain to you exactly what type of body the resurrected ones will have when they come back to life. It says, how are the dead raised up? And with what body do they come? Notice verse 42. So also is the resurrection of the dead. It is sown in corruption. It is raised in incorruption. It is sown in dishonor. It's raised in glory. Friends, the dead will be raised in incorruption. Do you know what that means? It means free from decay, free from physical decay. So if those who are resurrected are raised in incorruption, then why does the Jehovah's Witness organization tell us that we will have to attain to perfection? Why do they tell us that there will be an education process where people will be given a second chance to learn about Jehovah? That is not scriptural, and we're going to get into a little more of this, but let's keep going.
We can also expect an early resurrection for some of the faithful men of old who will join others as princes in the new world.
Friends, Matthew 27, 52 and 53 says that when Jesus was resurrected, the graves were open and many faithful men of old were seen walking about the city. It already happened. Garrett Loesch doesn't even know that.
Nevertheless, we should not be dogmatic on such matters.
Why is that, Garrett? Because you're wrong?
On many issues related to the resurrection, the Bible is silent. It does not spell out details of how, when, or at what locations the resurrection of individuals will occur.
1 Corinthians chapter 15 will give many details, accurate details, that this guy doesn't even know about. Or, you know what, he doesn't want you to know about. But we're going to also go into something very interesting from 1 Corinthians chapter 15 later on.
It does not tell us how those returning will be housed, fed, and clothed.
You know what's very interesting is one of my viewers from the UK, you know who you are, I know you're watching, he had mentioned to me anyway, gosh, you know, in looking at Jehovah's Witness paradise pictures, I never see houses. And you know what? I thought about it and he's right. We saw smiling faces, we saw panda bears and tigers and lions and baskets of fruit and vegetables. But did you ever see a house? If we did, it was very rare. Even though we always, when we would leave a door out in field service, we would always say, I want that. I want their house when they're destroyed. Does it matter? Now, friends, don't get me wrong. Jesus will reign for 1,000 years on the earth. Revelation makes this clear. But it is not this utopian paradise of the Jehovah's Witness organization. What they say is not scriptural.
It would be unwise to spend a lot of time trying to find answers that are at present unanswerable. It is best to just focus on the fact of the resurrection to come.
Yeah.
1 Corinthians 15:52 also speaks of the resurrection, but not of an earthly resurrection, but a heavenly, spiritual one. This text refers to anointed ones who would die and be raised in the blink of an eye.
Friends, 1 Corinthians 15:51 and 52 says, Behold, I show you a mystery. We shall not all sleep, but we shall all be changed in a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trump. For the trumpet shall sound, and the dead shall be raised incorruptible, and we shall be changed. This is not referring to only anointed Jehovah's Witnesses. The verse says we shall all be changed. And in order to find out who these people are, you have to put the verse into context to see who Paul was referring to. Read it, friends. Paul wrote a letter to the Corinthian church. It was a Christian church with Christian believers. It was not a congregation of Jehovah's Witnesses. Paul said we shall all be changed. If it was a congregation of Jehovah's Witnesses, wouldn't it say only the anointed will be changed? It doesn't. Put it into context.
This resurrection began during our time, the time of the end. When they die, they go to heaven in an instant, like during the blink of an eye.
Remember, friends, 1 Corinthians 15:52 says, in a moment at the last trump, we shall all be changed. It's not something that is progressive.
But those who have the earthly hope to live forever on earth in paradise also will have the same perception later when they will be resurrected in the paradise.
Where's the verse for this, Loesch? There is none. There's not two classes. It's not an anointed class, and it's not a great crowd class. There's no classes. It's saved and unsaved. All right, so Garrett Loesch goes into suggestions on how to deal with people who are grieving over the death of loved ones, like sending a card, listening to them. I guess that's the comforting part of his talk, how to comfort somebody grieving.
There will never again be a pandemic to claim the life of faithful servants, because at that time, no resident will say, "I am sick."
Well, we truly thank you, Brother Loesch, for those very comforting, loving words. We really felt your love for the worldwide brotherhood, and certainly those words were food at the proper time.
All right, friends, now Stephen Lett explains, and I quote, "We are under a vicious, intense attack." He next goes on to explain how Satan slaughtered Job's attendants. I want you to notice how many times Stephen Lett says the word murder. Check it out.
What will you do in the face of Satan's attack? Well, that's a relevant question for all of us here, because without exception, we're under a vicious, intense attack. As the battle intensifies in our individual cases, will we be able to stand our ground, bravely fight, and come off victorious? Let's talk about our enemy, Satan. He is no ordinary foe. Jehovah educates us regarding this enemy we're fighting. For one thing, he's a premeditated murderer. Look at what he did to Job's attendants, slaughtered them with marauder bands. Look at what he did to Job's 10 children. He murdered simultaneously all 10 of them. Yes, he's a premeditated murderer. He wants to murder into everlasting death every one of us here. Evil, wicked, murderous, but he's not stupid. He's highly intelligent. The fact that he was once in the truth makes him more intelligent in a sense, or we could say clever, because he has knowledge of having been in the truth. John 8:44, he did not stand fast in the truth, but he was in the truth. Now, to illustrate.
All right. So Stephen Lett claims that Satan was in the truth, which means Satan was a Jehovah's Witness. He quotes from, he sort of quotes from John 8:44, and then immediately says, well, let's illustrate, to create a diversion from what he just said. Now, we'll get to what this diversion that he creates, but I first just want to explore what he said. Here's the verse, friends, John 8:44. Let's see if this proves that Satan was a Jehovah's Witness. What's underlined? He was a murderer from the beginning and abode not in the truth because there was no truth in him. What was this truth that Jesus was referring to? He was talking to the religious leaders here, friends, and they rejected Christ, okay? They rejected him, and in part because they claimed to be the children of Abraham. We are of Abraham. We are the chosen ones. So they didn't want to hear about Jesus. So therefore, Jesus says, you are of your father, the devil. Notice what's underlined. Jesus said, if ye continue in whose word? My word, not Jehovah of Watchtower, Jesus' word. Then ye are my disciples indeed, and ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. Jesus is the truth, friends. The truth here refers to continuing in the words of Christ, not being a Jehovah's Witness. Lett accuses Satan of being the one who brings people out of the Jehovah's Witness organization. Satan does that. So therefore, if a Jehovah's Witness is thinking about leaving because they realize that these guys are full of nonsense, in their minds, they're turning their lives over to Satan if they choose to leave. That's the gist of what we're hearing here. And we know that that's what they believe.
How this makes me more dangerous, think about a few of the false brothers during World War II who left the truth and joined the Nazis in persecuting the brothers in the truth. They had knowledge of who were taking the lead. They knew where they lived. They knew the strategy that was being utilized. See, they were more dangerous, weren't they? Well, the same with Satan. 2 Corinthians 11:14 says, Satan keeps disguising himself as an angel of light. Now, it's very easy for him to pretend to be what he used to be. He's not just mad, he has great anger. The tremendous reduction of his sphere of movement adds undoubtedly to his great anger. We have his undivided attention, don't we? So that's bad for us, and that makes him dangerous. I'd like you to imagine that all of the mafia members, all of the drug cartel members, and all of the terrorists of the entire planet Earth were gathered up and were confined to New York City, the city limits, and you live there too. Now, can you imagine the escalation of crime and evil that would take place there? And he has hordes of demon helpers. That makes him more dangerous too. We can't underestimate the ruler of the demons, nor these demons that work under his supervision. We find that Satan is a premeditated murderer, and he has hordes of demon helpers. And you don't have to scratch your head and say, I wonder if I'm being persecuted. Now, this experience centers around a 29-year-old brother named August Dickman. Now, you probably remember this experience, but he was put in Sachsenhausen concentration camp, 1937. He was ordered to sign his military induction slip. Of course, he refused to do that. Now, the camp commander was furious. So he got permission from Himmler, the head of the SS Guard, to publicly execute August in front of all the camp inmates. And he arranged a special assembly after he got this permission, and he had Jehovah's Witnesses right down front where they would get the full impact of the execution of our dear brother. Well, after he was executed, all the other inmates were dismissed. The camp commander said to the witnesses there, he said, who is now ready to sign the declaration? Well, not one of more than 400 witnesses responded. What a slap in Satan's face. Oh, Satan uses these, and he's brought down many away from Jehovah out of the truth. What are some of these snake-like crafty acts? Let's just discuss two examples. Here's one, materialism. Well, here's one more example, bad association. 1 Corinthians 15:33, Jehovah says, do not be misled. Bad associations spoil useful habits.
That famous verse, we've heard it, bad associations spoil useful habits, right? But friends, have you put this verse into context? Because it's from 1 Corinthians chapter 15. We've talked about that before during Loisha's talk. It's the famous resurrection verse. I have to show this to you. Here it is, friends, in red, up at the top. Do you see what's bold and black? How are the dead raised up, and with what body do they come? In green, verse 42, so also is the resurrection of the dead. It is sown in corruption, it is raised in incorruption. It's sown in dishonor, it's raised in glory. Friends, prior in the chapter, Paul is associating those who do not believe in the Christian resurrection of the dead to those with various kinds of immorality. I already showed you the Christian version of the resurrection of the dead, that we're going to be raised in incorruption. It's completely different than what these guys are telling you, that people are going to be raised from the dead for a second chance and they will have to slowly attain to perfection. According to 1 Corinthians chapter 15, those who do not believe in the resurrection according to Scripture are the ones who are the bad associations. Do you understand? So who are the ones who are the bad associations? Stephen Lett, Garrett Loesch, all of these governing body members who are telling you lies. Is that a joke? Spending time with people who spread falsehood about the resurrection like Stephen Lett and Garrett Loesch wears down the most faithful believer according to this chapter. Read it. It's not about those who are not faithful to Jehovah's Witness doctrine, friends. Is that just too much?
If you lock a man and a skunk in a closet, when they come out, will the skunk smell like the man? Or will the man smell like the skunk? Well, you know the answer. And Jehovah knows it works the same way with bad association. Without our armor, we are defenseless. We'd be like a soldier on a raging battlefield, dressed only in his underwear. How long do you think he would survive? Minutes, if that long. In fact, one brother living in a banned country refused to violate his Christian neutrality, so he was stripped naked, forced to lie face down, and ruthlessly beaten for 6 hours on his back and his legs. Spectators fainted, it was so ruthless. He said, regardless of the amount of insulting and beatings that we received, a few seconds would pass, and we would not feel anything more, even though the beatings continued. If we do our part, unquestionably, Jehovah always does his part.
Friends, there is the very common condition and response in this organization. Let me ask you, what if Jehovah's Witnesses do not do their part as the battle intensifies? What if they have a weak moment and they don't do their part? What will Jehovah do? What if they question these 8 men in New York? How will Jehovah respond? Will he still do his part?
So as the battle intensifies, and with Jehovah's help, we will come off completely victorious in the face of Satan's attack.
And it's a good opportunity to remember the 129 of our dear brothers and sisters around the world who are presently in prison because of their faith. You remember what Hebrews chapter 13 and verse 3 says? Keep in mind those in prison as though you were imprisoned with them, and those being mistreated, since you yourselves are also in the body. We certainly love and respect our brothers in Russia and in many other lands that are facing cruel persecution. We would like to give you an update on the project that Audio Video Services is spearheading at the Australasia branch.
This project is massive. I wonder how the average Jehovah's Witness feels when they're watching this, realizing that their donations are going to this. I want you to notice one thing, how they keep saying that Jehovah provides, but truly, who's providing? It's the brothers. They're volunteering. They're providing the funds, the equipment. It's truly unbelievable how this organization has such control over these people.
At the 2020 annual meeting, we announced an exciting new video project, The Good News According to Jesus. The Good News According to Jesus spans nearly 1,000 minutes of content.
But as the scope of this project became clear, there were times when we wondered how our small publisher base of around 68,000 would be able to fully support this large undertaking.
And all of a sudden, we had this project highlighted that was 3 times our normal workload.
So they go on to explain how they had so many obstacles like fires and floods, and how Jehovah brought them through this to solidify in the eyes of the indoctrinated who may be having doubts that Jehovah is the one who wants this massive undertaking to thrive, friends. Of course, with Armageddon right around the corner. Back to the video.
So many of our brothers experienced double disasters. As we then started to recover from this and build momentum to start the project, the COVID-19 pandemic began. We needed help from our brothers and sisters outside of Bethel. So we put the call out and they came from all over the branch territory to help. Many of them travelled days on rough and rugged roads to come and help us.
There were specific items needed for the project, so we asked the brothers and sisters to help to see where or how we could obtain them. It was so heartwarming to see all the responses flooding in. Within a short amount of time, we had received offers for donations or loans for much of the heavy machinery or large equipment we needed, and even things like plants for landscaping.
The brothers gave everything, friends. Where's the money, Watchtower? Where's the $2.2 billion that you made on the Brooklyn properties alone? And there are more properties to be sold there, friends. You know that? Where's the money going?
So at the beginning of the project, the number was about 200 people in the family, and that quickly grew to around 500.
You see Jehovah's involvement day to day.
Our brother had a trailer that was going to be donated to the project, but he didn't have the funds to pay for the freight. At the very same time, a sister contacted the branch and wanted to donate specifically to the project. The amount she donated was the amount that was needed to cover the freight to bring the trailer to Bethel.
One brother made a 30-hour round trip to deliver a large quantity of goods he manufactured for us. He made this trip not once or twice, but multiple times, even planning the work around 2 surgeries he had to have. A number of trucks were required to freight the goods, so members of his family and congregation shared in the driving, while local brothers extended hospitality.
Jehovah always finds a way to help us do his will.
How do we add enough details to connect with the audience, but without overstepping by introducing teachings or ideas that contradict the Bible's message?
It was especially encouraging to see how young ones responded to this need. They were looking to extend themselves in their service to Jehovah, and they were willing to adjust their secular jobs. They were willing to move to other locations in order to be able to support this project.
We were looking at how we could accomplish so many auditions in a shorter period of time.
We put actors in wardrobe in front of the camera and recreated certain scenes to see how this location could be used for our project. We went to one property, and when we talked with the brother, he said, "This isn't my property. This belongs to Jehovah."
There's probably just over 100 doors and gates out there. There's also over 200 windows, and we've got shutters, and all of these need either timber lintels or timber sills.
We have about 7,000 square metres of render to accomplish, and we'll have 2 teams working full-time for several months to accomplish this.
And many of our sisters, in fact, were the ones that had the skills that were needed to create the historical effect that was required.
To achieve the weathering that would happen on the stone, if it sat there for hundreds of years out in the weather, the water would get into the stone and slowly break it down. So then there's going to be areas of the stone that are softer, so they'll wear away quicker. So then that's done with the wire brush. And then some spots with the acetone, it puts little divots into the stone, which occur naturally in limestone. Once the project's completed in the backlot, the brothers and sisters would have applied up to 4,500 square metres of stone finish to the buildings. In the temple area in the backlot, there's a little over 4,000 square metres of concrete that has been made to look like stone.
Well, one of the contractors that quoted on the job was actually a brother. And that particular brother said, well, you know what, I can volunteer to do this, and there's enough brothers around that we can bring together, and we would be more than happy to be able to do it on a volunteer basis. So an isolated area was set up where these brothers could test and sample and produced the concrete that was needed for the floor finish of the temple. So over 27 days of straight pours, we had approximately 30 brothers and sisters each day come in and work tirelessly to be able to accomplish this temple floor for us.
We ended up finding a brother who owned a sawmill and had property with trees on it, and he willingly chopped down the trees on his property and provided them for us, delivered them to site, and actually donated them to us, and they were exactly what we needed.
And then obviously getting the right approvals at the right time, despite objections. We know that there's no one else other than Jehovah that could have a hand in that. So it's obvious that Satan has put everything he can in front of us, but Jehovah has provided every time at the right time. It's no coincidence that his hand has been on this.
Seeing the collaboration in our monthly meetings with the entire team, where we have the World Headquarters Legal Department, the World Headquarters Computer Department, we have the Purchasing Department, we have Design Construction, we have the regional video teams, we have audio-video services.
How are actors being prepared to reach our hearts through their performance? Imagine the powerful impact this video series will have on people. It will help you and me follow Jesus' footsteps closely. It will help us draw closer to Jehovah.
This is extremely disturbing. Let me show you the scene again.
It will help us draw closer to Jehovah. It will help us draw closer to Jehovah.
Who are these hooded characters? Are these people falling down in fear? Why are they cowering? This is who this religion serves, friends. This is not the God of the Bible. Nobody wore hoods. Nobody wore hoods when standing before the God of the Old Testament, friends.
It will help us draw closer to Jehovah.
He said it will help us. The video, this Jesus video, will help us grow closer to Jehovah, and they put this image on the screen. If that's not telling you who they truly serve, friends, I don't know what is. All right, now we're going to listen to Samuel Hurd as he discloses a brand new revelation, and it's a pretty big one.
It is likely this series will be used to touch the hearts and minds of billions of resurrected ones in the coming new world.
We have to make adjustments. Now, you may have heard of a few adjustments in our understanding of things already today, and there could be more adjustments that will have to be made later on. Now, you may recall that we used to think a certain way some 10 years ago about the following matter. We felt that some of the anointed would survive Armageddon and move right on into the paradise with the other sheep and maybe stay there for a given time and then be brought to life in heaven. But as we understand it, some things Jehovah will not permit us to see, even though we read over it many, many times. We can't see it until Jehovah puts the light on it. And what I'm about to reveal to you today, Jehovah is behind it. Not the governing body, not any human here on the earth, but Jehovah God. He helps us to see things. We understand now that all of Christ's anointed brothers will be in heaven with him before Armageddon starts. Now, that's the understanding that we have today.
All right, so the governing body members are going to be whisked away, and they're going to be gone, and the great crowd is going to be left alone.
But a few of the other sheep have expressed a concern on this subject. Will we feel abandoned in our time of need? Well, let me reassure you that you will not be abandoned. You need not to think that you will be abandoned because of the anointed not being in your midst any longer.
Who knows why? Who knows why they've made this change? So many have speculated so many things. Well, maybe it's because they've been named as defendants. Maybe they know something that we don't know. Maybe it's because they're just such a joke. We never used to know who the governing body members are, but now that we're seeing them and listening to them, we realize that there's no way that they can be chosen by God. Who knows? We can only speculate.
What's going to happen when all the anointed are taken to heaven? Will the great crowd be left in the lurch? Will they stray into some kind of trouble? Maybe even apostasy. Have you heard any signs of that already? We don't live in ancient Israel. Well, now you may wonder, why does that matter? Because that nation was heading for trouble from its early days. Today, things are different among God's people. Keep in mind, we do not live at the end of the 1st century CE. Will the great crowd wander about, lost and confused, like sheep without a shepherd? Of course not. Remember, Jesus is the shepherd.
Friends, listen, I've edited out a lot of the remaining part of his talk. He repeats himself over and over. He cracks jokes. The audience laughs. Seriously? Is this a comedy show? He just told them that the governing body misheard Jehovah, and they got this new revelation that they're going to be raptured up to heaven to be with Christ, their brother. They're cracking jokes. This is just horrifying. You can go to the website if you want to watch the remaining part of his talk, but here's just a few more points.
Before Moses died, Jehovah told him to commission Joshua to lead the people. Moses had been training Joshua for decades. In addition, there were many other capable men taking the lead. Chiefs of thousands, hundreds, fifties, and even tens. God's people were well cared for. Thank God for Moses and Joshua. Another example is that of Elijah. He had been taking the lead in pure worship among the Israelites for decades. But the time came for Jehovah to transfer him to a different assignment down south in Judah. Were faithful people in the 10-tribe kingdom of Israel left in the lurch? Far from it. Elijah had been training Elisha for years. Then there were also the sons of the prophets, evidently organized into schools of some kind, we don't know. So there were many faithful men helping to lead God's people. The governing body has been training men of the other sheep to take the lead for many decades now. We're familiar with the many schools to train elders and missionaries and traveling overseers and branch personnel. In addition to that, the governing body has personally been training helpers to the various committees of the governing body, and they're well prepared to continue in this work, caring for Christ's sheep. What about the anointed? What will they do after they depart the earthly scene? We want to know. That the political elements of this world will foolishly battle with the Lamb. They will lose, of course. The verse says the Lamb will conquer them. And who will help him? The verse continues. Also, those with him who are called and chosen and faithful will do so. Now, who are called, chosen, and faithful? At that time, it will be the resurrected anointed. So when the anointed are called to heaven, one of the first assignments is to fight. Yeah. But in heaven, we will be mighty spirit creatures, fighting alongside our warrior king, Jesus Christ. As for the other sheep, what will you need to do during that climatic time? Simply this: hide. That's right. At Isaiah 26:20, he wrote, "Enter your inner rooms and shut your doors behind you. Hide yourself for a brief moment until the wrath has passed by." It will be hide and seek. You will hide and they will seek to find you, but they will not.
Hide? 1 Thessalonians 5:9 says that we are not appointed to wrath, but to obtain salvation by our Lord Jesus Christ, friends. If you're a Christian, you're not appointed to wrath. You don't need to be hiding like this guy's followers. All right, I can't take it anymore with him. We're just going to wrap it up with Tony Morris.
Thank you so much, Brother Hurd, for helping us to realize that God's people are completely safe, even as we approach the Great Tribulation and Armageddon. But now the question is, when will those events occur? Please pay close attention to Brother Anthony Morris, another member of the governing body, as he speaks to us on this subject. Why keep on the watch?
Why keep on the watch? It's for our own good. It really is. Some of you have been serving Jehovah for a long time, and I'm not going to stare at anybody because I know different ones. But you're only human, and we'll address some concerns that some raise. And I just want to have you think about this here. Personal experience. Many years ago, my sons, Jesse and Paul, were in the early years of school, elementary school. And back at the time, I haven't heard it a lot lately, but from time to time, this would come up at a social gathering. Now, mind you, they're second grade, first grade, but these boys were thinkers. So they'd listen and they appreciated all these older ones. And we had a number of them in Rhode Island, longtime servants of Jehovah God. However, from time to time, this statement, and they'd be looking at my sons and, "Oh, you'll never graduate in this system. Not going to happen." So, I'm at their house. They just fed us. Lord help me, what am I going to do here? But this would come up from time to time, at least during those years. And maybe it was post-1975. I don't know. But they'd make these statements. And I'm going to give you a big confession because, this one comes clear to mind. Driving back from the gathering, Jesse and Paul are, thinking and they're troubled. They're puzzled. What is this about? Why? Because, they had goals and what are we going to do? And they're thinking of the things in the future for them as growing in their love for Jehovah. Is that true, Dad? And so I'd say, look, and let me tell you, these people saying these things were longtime servants. Let me tell you, these people saying these things were longtime servants, experienced people. If any of you are guilty, God loves you. He forgives you. If you did that back then, you didn't help anybody.
This false prophet is insulting his audience, mocking his audience, blaming his audience for spreading false rumors, when in fact it was the truth that this doomsday cult, the Jehovah's Witness organization, printed in their own publications. And the audience is laughing. Go figure.
But I'm going to give you a big confession. So that one particular night, we're driving back. It was a little distance from where we were. And they brought that up. They're sitting in the back seats, so we're having this conversation. And I told them, I said, look, you boys remember, you got to keep on the watch. This thing could go on and be ready for it to go to 2020. Honest. I mean, we're talking almost 40 years. Almost 40 years. I felt pretty safe with that. But you know what year this is. What are you going to do? But at least I'm happy to say they and my wife and their wives, we're all still keeping on the watch.
Congratulations, Tony. You're still keeping on the watch. I'm not. I got out.
So one brother wrote and appreciated his sincerity, and he said, during the annual meeting of 2019, the Ramapo project was announced. And if I remember right, it was stated that the project would be complete in a few years. With recent Watchtower articles telling us that we are in the last of the last days, beautiful expression, but words are powerful. It seemed a little disappointing that this may push Armageddon off a few years. This was his sincere concern, really. And you know he's not alone. They're only human. Well, how should we respond? The governing body wants all of you to know, including those that'll see it later, we are also looking beyond the last days. You're getting that message. The faithful slave now says many of the projects that are being worked on now, like Ramapo and the Good News According to Jesus video series, may or perhaps will carry over into the new world to assist the great crowd with the work ahead and perhaps including resurrected ones. That's comforting.
Wow. Isn't that comforting? So they're kind of going to be directing the work from heaven through Ramapo, kind of like the way the 7th volume of the Finished Mystery, of Studies in the Scriptures, the Finished Mystery, said in the foreword that it was the posthumous work of Charles Taze Russell, meaning he directed it from beyond the grave. That's what the book claimed, friends. I'm not saying that's what occurred because we know Clayton Woodworth wrote it, but that's besides the point. But isn't that what this guy is saying? There's such liars, such deception.
I come from a long line of people who believed in keeping an expectation of the end. My mother died just last year, and she always felt that the end was close at hand. She just knew that she would live to see it, but she didn't. She had first learned the truth from her mother-in-law, my grandmother, an anointed Christian who often told me that she hoped to see the end come in her lifetime. She didn't. She had learned the truth from her mother, who died when I was a teenager, and firmly believed she would see the end in her lifetime. She didn't. And she, my great-grandmother, had learned the truth from her mother-in-law, who died long before I was born, and surely felt the same way about seeing the end. She didn't. And here I am now in my 7th decade of life, firmly believing that I will see the end very soon. So what does that mean? That I'm just another one in a long line of delusional people? I don't think so. Maybe his great-grandparents might have heard Isaiah speak, leading them to conclude that Jerusalem's end was near. Should that man decide that his family had been deluded just because they hadn't seen the destruction of Jerusalem? No. Jerusalem was destroyed in 607. So see, he's living in 608, having these concerns. Months later, it happens. I don't feel that I've been deluded or that my faithful family members have been. Each one who served Jehovah led a good, productive, useful life. They were not just sitting around waiting for the end. They always had projects that kept them busy in Jehovah's service, goals in personal study and preaching and helping others. And our second brother, about how keeping on the watch has benefited him. My mom raised my brother and me in the truth. She often expressed to us her confidence that the end is just around the corner. She didn't just say it, she lived it. She devoted herself to the ministry so that she could help others to serve Jehovah while there is still time. She kept an expectation of the end, doing so year after year until she died. Now I'm approaching the age of my mother when she died. I've been keeping on the watch for over 50 years now. Am I bitter because the end has not yet come? No, not at all. How could I be? I've lived a full and satisfying life by living according to Jehovah's standards. My dedication is unconditional and unending. I did not dedicate myself to Jehovah on the condition that he brings the end within my lifetime.
Friends, the point is not that Jehovah did not bring the end in this guy's lifetime. The point is that he served a doomsday cult. He and his mother and his grandmother and all of his ancestors served a doomsday cult with false predictions for over 150 years. That's the point. Now, these guys are trying to cover themselves by terrifying their followers into submission. That's the point.
And then finally, meanwhile, I must endure to the end. That means to the end of this system or the end of my life, whichever comes first.
All right, that's all I can take of Tony Mars. Listen, Mark Sanderson is going to give some direction now that every one of us should find terrifying. This whole annual meeting touched on it. Check it out.
They indicate that we are close to the outbreak of the Great Tribulation. How vital it is, brothers, that we continue to recognize Jehovah's channel for receiving spiritual food. The November 15th, 2013 issue of the Watchtower mentioned key points for elders in particular to keep in mind as we prepare to face the attack of that coalition of nations that the Bible calls Gog of Magog. Now, I'm going to quote the article. This is what it stated. This is quote. At that time, life-saving direction that we receive from Jehovah's organization may not appear practical from a human standpoint. All of us must be ready to obey any instructions we may receive, whether these appear sound from a strategic or human standpoint or not. Now is the time for any who may be putting their trust in secular education, material things, or human institutions to adjust their thinking. Very sober words that apply so well at this particular moment.
Sober words, terrifying words. Okay, that was November 2013. We just heard, what's his name? Samuel Hurd tell us that the governing body members are going to be raptured out, okay? Now we have the January 2022 Watchtower that says this, okay? During the Great Tribulation, we may receive instructions that seem strange, impractical, or illogical. Of course, Jehovah will not speak to us personally. He will likely provide direction through, doesn't say the governing body, it says his appointed representatives. How will you fare during that crucial time in human history? The answer might be indicated by how you view theocratic direction now. If you trust the direction we receive today and readily obey, you will likely do the same during the Great Tribulation. No words. I have no words.
So, dear brothers and sisters, be determined to continue to follow our leader, Jesus Christ, and the channel that he is using today.
The channel. Nowhere in Scripture does it say that God uses a channel during the end time. The book of Hebrews tells us that in these days, God speaks to us through his Son, us, all of us, not the governing body members, friends. So that's it for the annual meeting. That's it for JW Broadcasting, but I just wanted to share one more thing with you. They go through this video postcard, and this one is from Jamaica, and I want to share with you how they make it absolutely clear that Watchtower truly is not providing help to brothers. It's the local brothers, okay? Just check this out.
During the pandemic, when it became necessary to hold meetings by video conference, our Jamaican brothers had to deal with a special challenge: the high price of internet access. The cost of data to connect to just one meeting was twice the price of taking a taxi to the Kingdom Hall. So it was far more expensive to attend a meeting virtually than it was to attend in person. Our Jamaican brothers and sisters generously have been sharing their electronic devices and helping one another with the cost of data so that everyone can access the meetings and enjoy good association.
Friends, the God of Watchtower, Jehovah, is not providing for people through his organization. Now, is he? You don't have to be a Jehovah's Witness to experience the kindness of others. These brothers in Jamaica were sharing their iPads. Why couldn't Watchtower, they made billions of dollars on the sale of Kingdom Halls all around the world, they can't send them iPads? Now that would be Jehovah providing for his organization. That's it, friends. I hope you enjoyed this recap. Please understand that the God of the Watchtower Corporation, who has the same name as the God of the Old Testament, Jehovah, he's a different God. The God of the Old Testament is different than this God. Replace the lies of Watchtower, friends, in your minds. The lies that may have enabled you to continue living a life of defeat. Move forward, step forward in the love of Christ. Trust him because he died for you, friends. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope you have a great day.